Hello and good morning. We're just trying something new this morning on Facebook, so I hope it's working. Here we go. Wonderful. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about, is your workplace future ready? So a lot of us have been heading back to the workplace in the last few days, mostly this week. And what I want to have a chat about today is how do we start to look at what the future of our workplaces is going to be? Now, that future is going to look very different for every organisation. And the reason it's going to look different is because every business is different. The clients that we have are different. The way that we interact with those clients is different. Our employees are different. The way that they need to perform their roles, and even individually, they're all different. And so what we need to be looking at, what all those individual preferences are and what all those individual requirements for those organizations are, and how we can start to support that as we move forward. Now, we work on 5 different pillars in terms of how we support our organizations in understanding what it is that they need to do for their organizations to make sure that they're going to be ready to be able to move forward into the future. We look at all of those particular tools around how we can support them and what our model is to support them into that future. So the first thing that we start with is actually reimagining the future. So what does their future actually look like? And a few things come up when we go through this process. So why is it that we actually go to work? So in every organization, we need to be asking that question and looking at what it is that our employees are actually coming into the workplace for. What are they actually doing there? So we need to be looking at and observing how they're interacting, what are the types of activities that they're doing there, what are the types of tools that they need to do through this process. So actually going in and observing what's happening in our workplace environments so that we can start to understand and see what it is that we're actually doing there and why we are actually going into our workplace environments. The other thing that we need to be thinking about is how can we start to shift our mindsets around what an office actually is and the fact that it needs to move from being a liability to an asset. So a lot of organizations have their workplaces sitting on the balance sheet under as a liability. So it's a cost to the business. However, that asset is something that supports your largest cost on your balance sheet, and that is your people. So your workplace environments are there to support your people in actually performing their job. And as they're your largest liability and your largest asset, your workplace too should be considered an asset. It's something that enables them to perform. It enables them to do the best job that they possibly can to service your clients in the best way that they possibly can. And in order for your business to actually thrive. So if we start to shift our mindset around how our organizational workplaces are being looked at, and we take them from being this liability and start thinking about them as an asset, what is the potential that our workplaces can actually provide to our organizations when we have that shift in our mindset? The other thing that I start with when we're looking at reimagining someone's workplace environment is we want to understand the data. We need to understand where they are right now. How many people work for them? What's the demographic of those people? Where do they live? What do they do? How do they interact? How do they communicate with one another? Where do they congregate? What are the types of roles and activities they need to do? So all of this foundational data is really gold so that we can start to then forecast what it is that we need our new workplace into the future to do and how it's going to support us. So thinking about gathering all that data, how can we then do things more efficiently? How can we reduce waste in our organization? What's working, what's not? We need to develop that foundation so that we understand where the opportunity is. The other thing in terms of thinking about where we're going into the future is around technology. So we've all just experienced the pandemic and how that has transformed our adoption of technology almost overnight. Everyone's jumped on Zoom, we're able to do that, but how is technology going to continue to enable us into the future? So we're looking at artificial intelligence. How is automation going to impact on our business? What does that mean for our daily operations, for our teams, and how we're going to interact with one another? Also then, We've also then got virtual reality. How is that going to impact on our business? Is there a way that that is going to have an impact and change the way that we work and the way that we operate, the people that work for us and the tasks and the roles that they actually then perform? But then we've also got this exponential increase in the way that technology is evolving. If you think about where technology was even just 5 years ago and what we now have access to and the ability that that gives us, what is that going to look like in another 5 years? How are we going to ensure that our workplaces are adaptable, flexible, and can actually then adopt this rapid change in technology so that we can support ourselves going forward into the future? All of these elements really impact on us as individuals and our environment, and how that then changes the way that we behave, how that we perform, all have a significant impact. And so that's the first thing we want to be looking at, is what does the future potentially hold for us and how can we go about reimagining that? The second thing that we start to consider is around behaviours. So how do we actually want people to be showing up into the workplace every day? What is it that we want them to do when they're there? Do we want them to be collaborating, connecting? Do we want them to be doing deep work? Do we want them to be meeting with clients? So as an organisation, we need to start to identify what it is that we want our people to actually be doing when they show up in our workplace environments, and so therefore what those behaviours are that we wish to see. So when we get them into our workplace, what do we want them thinking, feeling, saying, doing? How do we want them to actually experience the whole space? And a lot of this comes down to how we are explaining and infusing our values into our workplace environments. So a lot of organizations have and should have values around what they believe in and how they expect people to engage and participate in their business. And when you unpack those values can actually then articulated out as behaviours. So if you have a particular behaviour, a particular value, let's say your value is collaboration, well, that is going to play out as a series of behaviours that you're then going to expect to see within your workplace environment. So you can then start to create spaces that facilitate those behaviours to be exhibited amongst your employees. So that then creates congruence, and therefore it creates engagement. So when we say we're going to be behaving, we value a particular value, we then expect a particular behaviour to be exhibited in order to show that. And so that's how we can then start to consider our workplace environments to substantiate that. And the way that we can start to do that is through a few things. So we've got one thing called nudge theory, and nudge theory is all around making the right choice the easy choice. So how can we create spaces or environments that enable people to potentially unconsciously behave in a particular way that we know is then supporting the goals of the organisation. The other one is around neurogenesis. So we all want our people to be highly creative, we want them to be innovative, and our environments enable that. So they can actually influence the way that our brain makes connections. We can influence how people are becoming creative by enabling them space to think more freely, and our environments enable that type of interaction and therefore that brain activity and that creativity to come through. One of the other things that we look at is well-being, and there is a lot of data that's coming out now that the well-being of our employees is going to become much more of an employer's responsibility going into the future. So how can you support your employees to ensure that they are well? Now, this just isn't their physical well-being, it's also their mental and their emotional well-being. And well-being is so much more than just putting in a fruit box. Many organisations I've seen, and it's a great initiative to start with, is just putting in the fruit box, but it goes so much further than that. We need to be thinking about both the mental and the emotional well-being of our employees. And the way that we can start to do that is to think about how our environment is actually supporting our people and what that is doing to ensure that they have space for downtime. They have somewhere that they can retreat and they can collect themselves after they've had a stressful meeting, or they need to go away and they need to do some deep work where they can concentrate in a much more quieter environment with less distractions. We want to encourage them to be physically active, so creating an environment that encourages people to get up and to move around, to eat healthily, to to take care of themselves. But then also, how can we create a sense of well-being in our environments? And that comes down to lighting, air quality, even texture and senses in the space, and even that sense of smell and biophilia, introducing plants so that we've got that sense of greenery and that connection back to nature. So there's a range of ways that we can start to think about our well-being, but that's going to be another one of those foundational pillars that we need to be looking at to ensure that we're designing our workplaces to support us into that future. The fourth thing that we start to look at is the experience. Now, employee experience is something that I'm extremely passionate about, and as you already may have heard from me speaking previously, employee experience is that intersection of those three key environments of physical, cultural, and technological. So what do we need to be considering in each of those areas to ensure that we're creating the ultimate employee experience? Now, the thing with employees is we're all different. Some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. That means that we're going to work very differently. As an introvert, I'm going to want to be able to lock myself away and concentrate and have my own personal space. But if I'm an extrovert, I want a place where I can collaborate, I can create, I can be loud, I can have conversations with people, I can connect. We're all going to want very, very different things. And within our organizations, there is a broad mix of people, but there's also going to be different alignments within each organization as to whether you may be culturally more an introverted organization or more of an extroverted organization. And it's taking those things into consideration. But it's also the fact that as individually, I might actually want more structure in my life. So I might actually really enjoy the structure and routine of coming into the office every day and having that pattern that I can follow. My habits are set out for me. It gives me comfort. It might reduce my anxiety. That feels comfortable for me. But conversely, you might have parents or other people who like flexibility. One of our clients, he likes to surf, and so when the surf's up, he goes surfing, and he needs that flexibility to ensure that he's got that balance and he's getting his full experience. When the work's there to get done, he jumps in and he gets it done, but then when he needs to, he goes off surfing. So how do we ensure that we're catering for everybody, and what does that experience look like? Because my experience is going to be very different to your experience and what you want to see out of those workplace environments. And a lot of that comes down to ensuring that we're offering choice, that there is a sense of empowerment, that I can make the right choices, and that there's enablement for me to do that. So have I got the right technology that's going to enable me to work flexibly and remotely? A lot of that has been demonstrated in the last few months that that is possible. How do we then continue that on, and how do we ensure that that is going to be a really good experience for people as we move through? That experience also then goes down into looking at what their roles and their tasks are. So the job that I do is going to be very different to the job that you do, and how you need to do that job, and the tasks and the activities and the spaces that you need to do to perform that job well. So thinking about how that plays out, and then what are the different types of environments that we're going to need to provide, and what are the ratios of those environments to ensure that we're giving people that best experience. The other part of experience comes down to how I feel about being in an environment. What does my sense of belonging feel like, and how do I ensure that I know that this is the place that I fit? And a lot of that comes down to the sense of the space, the communication of our values, the communication of our brand, but also then, is there spaces for me to build relationships and foster connections with those that I work with? And that brings me through to our final point, which is around brand. So brand and culture to me are very intertwined. And for me, a brand is so much more than the logo that's stuck on the wall. I think about brand in the terms of the fact that we each have a purpose as an individual and as an organization, and that purpose informs our brand. And our brand is the things that we stand for, what we believe in. And then that brand actually leads our culture. And our culture defines our values, and our values then guide our behaviours. So you can see this link right back to the beginning when we're talking about what our behaviours are. All of that needs to come through from how we, what it is that we are here to do and what our purpose is as an organisation. So our brand and our culture are so intertwined. They're so heavily connected. And when you know what your purpose is, you can then start to articulate your brand, what it is that we stand for, what it is that we believe in. We all have a why we are in business beyond making money. What is the impact that we want to be making? How do we want to connect that with our society? How do we want to connect that in with our community? And what is the mark that we want to leave? What is our legacy that we want to be communicating? And all of those things tie into our brand. We all have an individual story. What is your story as an organization? What's the personality of your organization? Every organization, even across various sectors, everyone has an individual story, and there's a personality that you want to communicate and you want to be able to infuse into your built environment. And when you can create a brand that is infused into your environment, it will begin to create that culture. And that culture is then what gets radiated out of your business. And that's when you start to attract people that believe what you believe, because they're communicating it, you can see it, they can touch it, they can feel it. So what is it that you want to see in your organization, and how are you going to communicate your brand and your brand personality? So once you've got all of these 5 pillars, what we need to be doing is a lot of research, gathering all that data and then analyzing it so that you can begin to plan out what it is that you're going to need into the future. And to make sure that you're still going to be relevant as a business, that you're going to be sustainable over a long period of time, that you're creating an environment that is going to create an employee experience that people are really going to want to engage with, and it's going to attract and retain some really great top talent for you as an organization. Now, I recently heard a story from a colleague about a lady that she knew. She's an accountant, and she chose to take a role with an accounting firm for $10,000 less salary because she liked the way that that place made her feel. Now, imagine if in your organization you could be attracting really great talent at less than what market rate is because they want to work in your environment, that they feel like they fit in your environment. Imagine the opportunity that you're going to get there. So if you're interested in knowing more about how you can then create your workplace of the future, on the 23rd of June, we are launching our new program, and it's called Your Workplace Future Ready. We're going to be diving deeper into each of those 5 pillars that we've just spoken about. We're going to be sharing with you a lot more knowledge on how you can go about extracting that data, collating it, analyzing it, and then implementing it back into your business. We'll be providing you with all the tools and the resources that you need to be able to manage that through that process, and you'll get some coaching calls from me along the way as well to help you then understand and unpack that data so you can implement that into your own business. I don't want these sorts of conversations to be limited to big organizations. I want everyone to have the opportunity to create a workplace that is going to be sustainable for the longer term, that you're able then to create a great place for everybody to work. It's a really great thing for everyone to be able to really love going to work every day, and it's something that I don't think should be reserved for those that just can afford it. So by teaching you how to do this in my program, I'm hoping that we'll be able to implement much more broadly. The other exciting thing is that my podcast is going to be launching in the next week. And through my podcast, I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of the stories that I have heard from clients around how their businesses have transformed by going through these processes of understanding what their business looks like, unpacking it, turning it upside down and giving it a good shake out, and then packaging it back together to see how the pieces need to fit together. So I'd love for you to jump on and subscribe to that. We'll be letting you know once that goes live. But if anyone's got any questions before we wrap up this morning, please drop them in the comment box. I'd love to hear from anybody who has done some planning for their future or would like some more information on how they can plan for their future. They're things and conversations that I think are really important right now, because what we've got is a really great opportunity to really reshape what our workplaces are going to do into the future now, given the situation that we've just all experienced. So if you haven't had an opportunity to jump in this morning and have a conversation with me, please jump over to the community dialogue on Facebook and continue the conversation going. But thanks everyone for joining us, and until next week, I'll see you then. Bye.